Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Nier Replicant version 1.22474487139 ellipsis. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Xbox Series S, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, Steam, so basically PC. Quick interlude though, I did play the other Resident Evil demo in the castle, and it was a little more survival horror than the first demo, which was a little more action oriented, and that's really the only difference, hence why I didn't do a video. But let's get into the story of Nier Replicant, but I'm not going to call it by its full name the entire time because I can't remember the numbers. So first and foremost, Nier Replicant is a remaster of the original Nier, which was released here in America and Japan, and Nier Replicant is the Japanese version, which the only real difference being the fact that you play as, Brother Nier rather than Daddy Nier. That being said, the story basically revolves around you trying to save your sister who is gravely ill, and there are a bunch of twists and turns along the way. The game definitely tugs on heartstrings and honestly tells a really good story. Now, I could go into further detail into other things, but I'm not going to because I don't do spoilers, and I can absolutely tell you that that's not all there is to the story. But I think it's a story that is worth experiencing, so I'm really not going to go anything deeper than those vagaries. But to go along with it, I really like the characters in this game. Main character, not super generic, but a little generic. He plays out a little bit like you would expect him to. It's the other supporting cast that I think were really, really impressive, and I think they add the most to the game. I especially love Kaine's back and forth with Vice. I think that's some of the funnier stuff, and Kaine's attitude in general just entertains me. Let's get into the audio, and the first thing I am going to say is recently I have jabbed more than a few games for having soundtracks that aren't exactly worth remembering. Well, fortunately for y'all, Nier is very different from that in the fact that I have had this soundtrack for many, many years since I played the original Nier back in the 360? I have always loved this soundtrack. I think it's phenomenal. I think it will always stick with you. It's absolutely one of my favorites. To go along with it, I think the sound effects are good for this game. I think they work very well. I like the different sound effects for the weapons, the magic, just all of that I think works well together. And then you have the voiceover work. There are a few times where it gets a little cheesy, but I think that really fits, and it's really with specifically Vice, but I definitely think it fits the character. As for everyone else, I think they do a very good job. I'm actually really impressed with it. I had kind of forgotten how well they had done. Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a third-person action RPG, but Nier Replicant does differentiate itself from the original Nier in this element as well because it has changed the combat a bit. The combat is designed to feel a lot more like Nier Automata's combat, because let's be real about it, Nier Automata had a fantastic combat system, so remastering Nier, it made sense to bring that in there and, update that. Especially if you're going to remaster a game, it makes sense to do something like that. And I will say this will bleed into the controls just a little bit. I think that all works very well together because the controls are changed a bit, and I think it just comes together to be a more functional system. It's a sort of open world game. The areas are well connected, but there are loading screens in between pretty much everything, and the areas can be fairly large, but they're not as large as you'd like. Admittedly, playing on the Series X, my load times were very short, so not a huge complaint from me there. The game is a lot longer than you might expect, but it does follow a pretty good trajectory with, the main missions as well as a lot of side missions. I mean a lot of side missions. My only complaint with the side missions is that there's not really an easy way to mark them on your map. Well, you really can't mark them on the map. The only thing that gets marked on the map are the main missions. So the side missions do take a little extra work sometimes. I do wish that they had a marker system for them. If there was one, I missed it. I'm not saying that it's not there. I'm just saying I missed it. That being said, I do admit that a marker system wouldn't work for all of the missions because some of them are kind of mystery based, so it's kind of nice to not have them for some of the side quests. But overall, from a gameplay standpoint, I think it works very well. I like all the different elements, all the different weapons, and the way that you can add words to them and make them more powerful. I think that's a cool system. I like at a certain point in the game, you unlock the ability to use more weapons. You can get a much heavier sword, you can get spears. I really liked that element, although I did admittedly find at that point I generally only used the large sword. But I will say there were enemies that like the spear worked better for, there were ones that the smaller sword worked better for. I think they did okay with that. I think they could have done better mixing that up, but I'm not really unhappy with it. Now let's get into the controls, which, as I've said, they've kind of revamped and remastered to go along with, you know, it being a remaster, and the controls are really, really good. I was really pleased with the control scheme in this game. I didn't have any complaints with that, and I think the camera responded well, the movement responded well, the button prompts responded well. I just think, control-wise, it worked very, very well. Now let's get into the graphics, which I am going to say it's not necessarily the best looking game, but you can definitely see that they put work into revamping these graphics. It's not like they built them from the ground up, but they added so much more detail than was present in the original game, so I think they did a very good job with that. And I really just love the design of the world. I think it works very well, and I think it goes along with just everything else in the game. It's just very impressive how they visually tied this game together so well with the story, with the gameplay, just all of it. I really thought the enemy design was interesting, and they do things throughout the game to make each enemy a little more unique. It's not like there's 50 million different designs, but there are enough designs that it is interesting. I also think the character designs are really cool. I enjoy them a lot. I think they work with the story. I think they work with your character. So to wrap this up, I'm going to say I think this is an amazing game. I'm not going to say it's necessarily perfect. I do wish that visually it may have been a bit better, and I will say the story, while it is fantastic, it doesn't hit me as well as other stories in games that I have played, but I do think overall this game is amazing, and I think pretty much everyone should play it, so yeah, I'm fully recommending it. Now some of that may be a little nostalgia for me, although I'm a little hesitant to say that because it wasn't that long ago, but I did play the original Nier and I did really enjoy it. I will say I was a little disappointed with some of the articles I read because they referred to it as a prequel, which I think does it a great disservice. I mean, yes, it is the game that came before Nier Automata, but calling it just a prequel is really kind of disrespectful to the experience, especially since it's not like they made Nier Automata and then went back and made Nier. Nier existed long before Nier Automata. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what is your favorite RPG made in Japan? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one. Because, let's be real, Nier Automata's combat system was fantastic.